Man, this wing is massive. Hey guys, welcome back to the build of the Skymaster XL F-4 Phantom. This is a huge wing, and it's not even the full wing. Thanks for tuning in. If you're new here, we build very cool aircraft, and this is definitely one of them. This episode is all about the wings for the Skymaster F-4 XL Phantom jet. So if you've been following along in the build series, this will be fairly familiar to you, but this wing is a very unique piece of engineering, how it goes together. So the wing is split right down the center, kind of like a warbird as an example. You often see this with a warbird, but split right down the center. We got 4 bolts holding it to the fuselage, and I love something so simple like this. So when you mount your center line drop tank, your fuel tank, it's already keyholed and everything, and there's a piece of G10 that goes in there, like just ingenious, so cool. So that's the center part of the wing, and we've also got some winglets or wingtips that plug in here as well too, and those are fairly large extensions for those wings. Love it. So this is the F-4 wing. That's the highlight or focus on this video. So all of our servos are already installed in this wing, but like the rest of the aircraft, we're going to take those servos out, we're going to cycle them, we're going to make sure they're installed properly, and just make sure we're 100% happy with everything that's going on. Now fortunately this wing is quite simple, quite straightforward, and I think we'll be able to rock and roll through this quickly. Last video we were doing some gluing, so we just finished the last video and those parts are sitting over there. We're just going to leave them. We're going to clean off this bench here, and that's where we're going to work on our wings. So we got our wing on our workbench there. If you missed our last episode, we made a bit of a change here on how things are going to be run, or at least my interpretation of a change. I don't know if this has been done before by other people, but all the leads for the wings kind of have come out of this area right here. Obviously we're flipped on the wrong side, but if this wing was flipped over, you'd probably put those leads out right in this location here. But for me, for putting this plane together, it just makes more sense to have these holes in the leading edge of the wing structure. So I've made these 2 holes there, and we've got 2 matching holes right behind our UATs. So that's going to be how we put this plane together at the field. So plane will be flipped upside down. You're going to rest the assembled wing on the fuselage, plug all your connectors in right there, and pop the wing down, do your bolts up. So in my mind, it's the easiest way to put this thing together. So we're going to split these wings and get started. One of the things we have to do on every aircraft is we got to take the gear out, and we want to make sure we service all of our air cylinders, we Loctite everything, so that's one of the big important steps. So we're going to start deconstructing these wings to get them ready for reconstruction. All right, I just want to show you guys all the details with this wing. So I've just split them about 4 inches apart. Wing tubes, the 2 silver tubes, aluminum tubes, are removable, and the G10 keyhole things here, that stays in the left wing, and we've got one front back. And you can see here, this is the location where kind of all of the leads are kind of stock coming out of the airframe, and this front carbon pin is glued into our left wing as well. So that gives you the idea of the layout of the wings. All right, so we fished all of our wires through the front holes here, and tubes of course, and they're all perfect. When we put this wing in the fuselage, all of the excess is going to go inside the wing itself. There's tons of room in here for all the excess to just tuck in. So that is how we're going to organize things. Now what we can do is we can extend our gear. These gear are currently locked right now in the up position. So we'll just take our air compressor here, and it should be the blue line. Skymaster is pretty much standard with all of this stuff. So we'll take our blue line and extend the gear. Now the way these wings are laid out is just like the smaller F-4. We've got a door operated by an air cylinder. Geometry on this is a lot better because you've got way more room in the wing itself. When we did the smaller F-4s, we had to manufacture a dog bone linkage or a 90-degree linkage to make it work, but the angle on this one is much better. Big cylinder as well too. And then on the actual door itself, mounted to the landing gear, you've got a spring-loaded one, And this is nice because you have two huge springs operating this guy, so lots of force on those. You could see when I dropped the gear, I needed to make sure I had good pressure going in there. And then the other door, of course, is mounted to the gear itself. So that is good. We, of course, have the center line of the fuselage or the wing joint. That's transferred over. I can see here just visually we've got a little bit of toe-in added to the system, so that should all be done. We've got nice keepers on all of our lines and everything. We can see here we've got our mounting points, our hard mounts already installed in the wing for our pylons. So there's one pair right there, and then our drop tank goes right here in those pairs. So those are all done already, which is nice. Yeah, so happy with this. The wing looks really good. Of course, Skymaster landing gear, some of the best gear out there, outstanding stuff. When we put this back together, we're going to get rid of these zip ties, and we're going to be using some of our glue-on keepers. But it's nice just to see how everything's organized. The Skymaster legs are air oil system, so you've got an air fill right here, and there is oil in the actual leg itself too. Tires are inflatable. These tires have no air in them right now, so we can fill those up as well. Very nice setup. That's good looking gear. Okay, so to get the gear out, what we need to do is we need to have the gear retracted, pop the small door open, and then we have access to our 4 screws. Now that we know that plan, I'm going to undo our brake connections here before we retract the gear and take it out. All right, so this is how you take the screws out. You're popping the door open. We've got our 4 screws out. And from there, the gear is just going to slide out like that. There we go. So fairly simple. And what I do with the gear here on a new aircraft is I always just cut off the ends, because we're going to redo all of our ends anyways. And now we've got the landing gear, which we can service and make sure everything's Loctited and good to go. So when we're servicing these gear and Loctiting everything, we're going through and we're Loctiting things like our pinch bolts, our gear bolts here. We're going to go and do our screws holding the tire together, which are accessible from the back. So those are all the important things that you want to take care of. And then what I do is I put a couple drops of silicone lube inside the actual cylinder itself. So all I do is move the cylinder while I'm putting a drop or two above that, that nipple. So I just move the cylinder like this, go drop, drop, it sucks it in. Do the same thing on the upside, and then the cylinder has some lubricant in there to keep it sealed up, keep the O-rings in good shape. So that's what I do for these landing gear. So we've got our lines installed back on our landing gear, and we will tuck this gear back in. Obviously you want to make sure that your lines aren't getting pinched or anything like that. And there's some space underneath the gear, so that won't be an issue at all. So basically those lines are run underneath the actual landing gear itself. Cool, so that's good. So when I put these gear back in, obviously our holes and everything are lined up, but I'll take some thin CA, put a couple drops in each of the holes when I tighten those screws down, and what that does is that locks the wood screws in place. All right, so gear is back installed in our left wing. You can see our keepers that we put on the airline there for the brakes. We've got one on the base, one on the leg itself. And this is a great setup when the leg actually squishes down. You can see the brake line just folds out of the way behind the gear door. So that is wonderful. Very happy with that. That turned out good. And I think we're set with that stuff. So that's perfect. So one wing is done. As far as the gear goes, we're going to repeat the exact same thing on the other side. Once I'm happy with our line here, I'll take a little bit of black rubberized CA or some shoe goop, and I'll put it over the keepers to make sure those are held down. We're also going to service our air cylinder here as well too. We're doing exactly the same thing with the air cylinders that we did with the gear cylinder. So we're just going to put a little bit of lubricant on each side of the cylinder, and that makes sure that it seals up nicely. All right, so both of our wing gears are complete. We finished those off by putting some shoe goop on our connectors that hold the lines in the holders, and gear, doors, done. Next thing we're going to move on to is our surfaces. Number one, they're a center hinge. So we've got our rod going through, and I'm pretty sure that one rod goes through the aileron and the flap, which I know it does. Now you can see here we've got a little bit of play in our surfaces. I do have a method to get rid of that. A little bit of play in the aileron here. That play is in the actual hinge points itself. So first thing I'm going to do is undo our clevises. Also taking a look at our stock holes. So the closer hole, that allows enough movement for our surfaces. So full flaps is supposed to be 100 millimeters. I think this is like 120. So lots there. Aileron, we've got about 3 times the amount of required movement. So the actual stock location is perfect. And to get those clevises off, I just found out about this last year. Thank you, Kelly, again for this amazing tool, the BVM clevis pliers. Outstanding tool. All right, covers are off, and this is what they look like as soon as you take the covers off. I haven't done anything to them. It's cool. I like that Skymaster put some coils on the servo leads, which is nice to see. So we're going to unbolt these servos, unplug them from the extensions that go to the root of the wing, and we're going to give these servos a cycle and confirm that with plugging them into our central box that everything is done properly. Aileron basically is going to be zeroed. Flaps we're going to get set up so, you know, full flaps, takeoff, landing, or regular flying as an example. So we'll pull this aileron servo out first. All right, so we got our aileron servo out, and we're just putting it through its cycle. I just want to show you guys exactly what we got going on here. So they've used nice locking connectors, which is awesome. Happy to see that, and that's very good. Here's what the servo looks like as soon as it comes out. So again, we got a nice spiral on there. Now, one thing we'll do is when we get this servo ready to reinstall into the aileron pocket, we're going to figure out which lead this comes to. Because right now nothing is marked here, and we will be redoing this end with an ash lock connector. So all of our leads will go to the ash lock connector, but we don't know which one is which right now, so we'll get that figured out as well. So Jetty Box, we've talked about this many times on the channel, but this is a great little tool whether you use Jetty or not. We use this primarily for cycling servos, so we're going through the full servo travel right now. We do 990 cycles and speed about 30 to 50, and that's the 50 speed right there. Servo gets a little bit warm. And one of my most commonly asked questions is, why do we do this burn-in servo process? The reason is, if something's going to fail that's electronic, generally, going to make a generalization, it fails in the beginning of its life. So the goal here is to put the servo through a heat cycle, 990 movement cycles, and if it's going to fail, we want it to fail during this test and setup process, not in flight. So all of our servos, even the ones that come in the ARFs, pre-installed by the manufacturer, get this treatment. The other thing we're checking when we do this is we are taking these screws out here for the mounting points, Loctiting those. These did have Loctite on them, but we're redoing all that. And we will make sure the servo arms Loctited as well. These servo arms, we're going to end up cutting them down because we're only using the middle hole, we're not using the outer hole, so we'll sand those guys down so we don't have this excess sticking up. All right, so we got our aileron servo back installed, the horn sanded down, and we're going to address the play in our actual hinge system right now. So the play isn't in the G10 or fiberglass arms that come out from the fuselage. So if we take our rod and put it through there, there is zero play in the holes here. Where all the play comes from is the receiver of the rod right there. So there's a plastic sheathing that the rod sits in, and if we have the rod installed and we grab it with some, those pliers, hard to see, but there's a lot of play in the actual system itself. So that's where all the play is coming from, is from that tube. So let's address that. So there's kind of a couple options to deal with this. So what I would generally do is drop some oil or lubricant in the holes and some thin CA. Now the way this is set up is we have to approach it a little bit different, and I'll show you exactly how I am going to deal with this. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to take some lubricant. This is just, I think it's turbine oil, but it's light lubricant. And we're going to put some of that in the receiver holes. Don't know if I can get it in the center one. And then what I'll do is I will take some, put it on the rod, and we will install the rod to make sure the center section gets some as well. There we go. So the point of the lubricant is we're going to use thin CA to coat this shaft, and we want the thin CA to have a bond breaker between them. So all that's going to do is basically get rid of the play, still allow this to pivot and everything properly, but that's the whole point of what we're doing here. So now we've got lubricant installed in there. We're going to do the same thing on the flap side. There we go. So now our tunnel is lubricated on both surfaces. So now the challenge is getting our thin CA inside the tube. Generally, I want to do this with everything installed on the aircraft. So I'm going to get these surfaces installed, and then we'll take it to the next step. Okay, so the key here now is getting the CA in our tunnel. So what I want to do is I want to have this wing probably sitting on its end, and we have it exposed like this, and we're going to, so it's going to be up like this. We're going to drip some thin CA on, hopefully that's going to slide all the way down the surfaces. The aileron, we've got a little bit more coverage on the aileron, so we don't really have good access to this hinge, but we do have good access to this hinge. All right, guys, so how we deal with this is basically we want to get some thin CA into the hole there. So what I've done is I've just taken the thin CA, dropped it in our two slots, and also dropped some in the end hole as well too. Now there is balsa all in here holding that rod in place, so the balsa is going to soak up some excess as well. And then once we've got CA in there, spray a bit of kicker in those holes. Now you'll feel everything tighten up, so usually that gets locked in place. That's the point of the lubricant. So you take that and just go pop, and it pops it loose. You may get a little bit of squeaking and stuff, right? But it's tight. So now when I pull that flap in and out, there is zero movement in that flap. Before we had probably 3 millimeters of movement in and out, and now that surface is tight. So that's exactly what we want to do on the aileron surface. Oh, we got a little bit down on the aileron surface. There we go. Let's solve that problem as well too. So aileron, obviously some of our CA traveled down, but now with that aileron, there is zero play. We can take that a little bit further, make sure our CA is kicked off. There we go. We're still kicking CA off. Like you can see here, it's stuck. So we kind of have to pop it. There we go. So now that aileron is rock solid as well. So a little trick for you, and I suppose this trick even qualifies as a tip time, and this tip time has been brought to you by trusty bent screwdriver. All right, so with those surfaces solid now, we can start working on reattaching our servo arms to our servos and getting those things finished up. We are going to put some carbon rods on our arms here, so we're going to have to take these guys apart, get them sized again, and get our piece of carbon cut to go over top of our linkage. All right, we got Nez supervising us here. Thank you, Nez. Flap is done on this wing as well, so our left wing is still the first one we've been working on. We have to do our other wing, but the surfaces are all done. Worked out really nice and solid again as well too, and no play. Love it, absolutely awesome. A couple final points that I do here is when I'm happy with this, Just go in, put a little bit of rubberized black CA on the nut and also on the clevis retention clip and kick those off, and they're both good to go. Working on the wingtip here just to make sure it fits. Now I know these were tight when I first put the kit together, so I took a little bit of the BVM dry lube and put it in each of the holes on each of the rods, and I actually had the wingtip up on its end and installed the one tube, took this one, installed the other tube to make sure they worked, and then now this goes together a lot better. The stock clips here are very nice actually for the lights, so that's a cool setup. And one retention screw goes in the tip there through the aluminum keeper, so that should just slide together and pop a screw in place. All right, wingtips installed, very simple. Slides in, one 4mm bolt, and everything fits really well, so that's awesome. Looks really good. Now the lighting is for, there's a light right there on the end and a light right there. So that's what the actual plug-in is for on the wing. So other than the connectors on the front of the wing, this left wing is 100% complete, which is awesome. So all we do now is repeat the exact same thing on that side. Our gear is all done on this wing. We just have to do our surfaces to match that wing. A little change I did here for the servos is I got rid of the little clips. I just bent them and snapped them off. Didn't want to rely just on that, so I put my normal shrink tube on there for each servo. All right, so both wings are complete as far as the gear and the surfaces go. We just have the leads to do at the front of the wings. A couple of extra things that I did here is I've got a color match to this Skymaster gray already done up, so I painted the control arms and everything, so they were black obviously before. Now they're all gray, so those are done. And the other thing is the mounts here for the gear doors. If you use the Vallejo airbrush white gray color, it's almost an exact match to the Skymaster off-white that they use on the gear, so I painted both of those guys. They were wood before and glue, so now the wings look really good. So we've got both of our wing tips on. They're a bit of a struggle. This one is the, which one? This is the right wing, so that one was a bit of a struggle, but they do go on. So last thing to do here with the wings is to get all of our lines done at the front. So we've got all of our air lines to do. We're probably going to leave these fairly long. So take our shortest lead here, which is the red one, cut all of them off. And these, when we do the wings up, these are going to tuck inside, or when we install the wing on the fuselage, this is going to go inside the wing because there's lots of space in there. And then our wire connector here, same thing. We're just going to cut these off as tight as we can get them and install our Ashlock connector on these wings. So cockpit, we turned the front of the fuselage over. Cockpit turned out really good. This is nice and solid. I haven't touched anything yet. What we have to do first is we have to put a screw through the control panels on the side here and into the wood that's supporting it underneath over there. And that's going to hold these side pieces in place. Now the side pieces are also held in place with this front dash. So I don't think we have to put two screws, probably one screw here, and the front dash should be perfect, I think, as far as what we need to get everything sitting nice and snug. Oh, and we do have some new additions here in the shop. So if you're familiar with the channel, that bench with all of our bench mounted tools is now gone. And we've got some new hardware here at the shop. So we've got a new drill press, a new disc and belt sander, and to replace our drawers, we've got a new rolling cabinet. Perfect combo right here. This is great. All right, so we've drilled the rear part of our little panels right there and put a screw in each side. I think that one screw is going to be sufficient. Just undid the screws on the back of our seat, and we are pulling the seat out. So what we can do now is we can take our pieces of wood that we installed previously. We'll just take an X-Acto knife, slice those guys off, and hopefully once those are off, this center section just goes pop and lifts right out. That's the plan. All right, now this just worked out perfectly. I didn't plan on this, but The base of these side panels is kind of floppy, so I wanted to make sure that they're nice and secure. So I put 2 screws on the front corners there, and they are attaching to our plate right here. And then I put 2 more screws on our back portions, and they attach to our cross brace. So now, when our seat's attached and our pilot and everything, we just pop our back little latch out, and the whole seat comes out, and we've got good access to all of our electronics down below. And to put it back in, just simply pops in and get our little tab lined up, and we're good. That worked out very well. All right, and while we had the cockpit kind of in play here, took one of the Warbird pilots and installed him in the one of the seats and just laid the canopy in place. Dang, that looks good. Oh my gosh, that looks so good. Very cool. These Warbird pilots, top of the line, full G-suit, full suit outload and all that stuff. You can see everything on him is all detailed. They're expensive, but man, that is such a cool accessory package on the guy. So, and the front pilot is an exact match to them. Servo operating heads as well too, so they'll be on a randomizer. Their heads will be moving around. That looks really good. Really happy with that. All right, so treating the root of the wing here, we took one of our pieces of large snake skin, about 10-ish inches, and installed that over the airlines. Purpose of that, number one, is to just protect the airlines when they're sitting here against the opening in the wing. And then also when you slide these in, it helps everything to slide because it's all bundled together. Put a piece of 1/2-inch shrink tube over that, and we've got all of our connectors installed. So that part's done. And we'll do the same thing obviously to this wing, but we're going to do our ash lock connectors as well. All right, so both wing connectors are done now. We've done our ash lock connector on both sides. We've marked the aileron and the flap. We'll put a label on those as well too. Now I didn't know which lights were which, but that really doesn't matter because when we have our lead coming out of here going to the lighting controller, we can flip those around and do whatever we need to do with them. But those lights on the wingtips, they should be solid anyways. So yeah, those are done, and our other side is just clipped in there now just to keep it. So the wings are completed as far as connectors and air connectors go. Just getting the pylons mounted on the aircraft. Now the Skymaster kits, this one came with the center of the dowel drilled out. Usually if it doesn't come with the ordnance kit, those won't be drilled out. So I'll show you guys exactly what we're doing here or how I mount these and some of the specifics. So this side's already done. This is the drop tank. That's the bomb side. And we still have to do the right wing here. So first thing I do is if these weren't marked out, I get the center of one marked, get it lined up, and then I mark wherever that hole lines up on the other one. This one's already done. So now what I'll do is I'll take a 1/16 drill bit and we get those guys drilled out. Obviously making sure you don't go too far into the top skin of the wing. That would be a bad day. Okay, so those are done. I'll show you what screws we use. So if you're not familiar, in Canada we've got something called a Robertson screw, which is a square head. And this is, I know in the US it's mostly Phillips, but this is the Robertson screw, so just a square. Works amazing, and part of the reason it works amazing is you can put it on the end of your screwdriver like this and it doesn't fall off. That's one of the huge benefits. But small screws, you get so much more torque, it doesn't strip, just a far superior way to do things. So I don't use the stock screws. The stock screws to mount the ordnance is going to be something like the Phillips screw here, which I don't use. So now what I do is I take my screw and we're going to screw this into both of the wing locations. We're going to pull it out, and then we are going to drop some CA in there to harden both of the thread sections up. As I mentioned with you guys very often, we share the good and the bad here at the Lighter Side of RC. We've got some good and some bad to share with you. So we just caused some more work on this F-4. Okay, so right wing, the napalm, as is listed, the big tank is mounted, that's good. Swapped out the screws here for some Allen key large screws, so those go all the way through the mounting tabs. As I was installing this one here, oh look, one of the tabs fell in. Rattling around, there's obviously zero access to get to this thing. So we've got to fix this now. We've got a couple fixing options. Obviously we could cut an access panel, which would be okay. The problem there is getting it close enough to the mount, which we can do in this area right here. So we've got that as an option. The other option is we can cut along this panel line all the way around, and that gives us perfect access and probably easier access to fix, although it's a larger repair. So if we do the little access hole here, we could glue in some corners and screw that access panel back down, and you'd never really know it's there. So that's probably the route we're going to go. We can't go right in the center because there's structure there, so we may just be able to go like this. All right, so fortunately I just used my X-Acto knife, cut an access panel, didn't fully cut it out, which was a good thing because patching this is going to be a lot easier, and we were able to get this fixed. So that's repaired. Now we just need to glue in some backing pieces and get this repaired. Now we don't need access, so we can just get the plywood glued on there and then glue that piece down. All right, and drop tank or whatever that is has been all patched, and of course you can't tell because it's hidden down in that area right there. So if you look for it, you can tell because the paint match isn't 100%, but pretty much invisible and all sealed up, so that's good. We've got all of our ordnance mounted to the wings now. So the pylon mounts on the wings, the holder mounts on the pylon, and then each of these guys mounts on the holder. They're all keyholed. So one thing I'll do when I'm, now that this stuff's all fit, is when I pull it off, I'm going to mark each item. So for example, right drop tank, I'll just write an R on it. The pylons are sized for those specific items. So if we take this drop tank and put it on the other wing, the hole spacing isn't 100% the same, and that's drilled from the factory. So they do have to go back on the same way. The clusters here, those can all just come off, the holder can stay together, but if they're taken off the holder, then those will be marked as well too. So we'll go R1, R2, R3, left 1, left 2, left 3. So those things are done, and the wings look awesome. And that is the wing episode complete. The F-4 Phantom XL from Skymaster, the wing, gear, everything's ready to bolt on the fuselage. Big step accomplished in this video. Just want to give a shout out to all the channel members. Thank you so much, guys, for being channel members. If you have no idea what channel membership is, there's some information down below. But our channel members, they get to see our videos early. Often we have 2 to 4 videos, which is like 1 to 2 weeks of videos already uploaded to our channel, and channel members get early access to those videos. It is a paid thing, but if you're interested in checking it out, check out the links down below. Huge step accomplished in this video, guys. Next video, we are continuing on with the fuselage. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.